Hello amigos, this is Pablo Garcia, the engineer photographer. For the last 5 months, I've been using the Canon R5 and I'm loving this camera. For photography, landscapes, I have gotten great results, even though I've been using my old EF type lenses with an adapter. Lenses like the Canon EF 100-400, these have given me great results with the Canon R5. But I've been selling my gear. I already sold a number of lenses and an old camera, and I'm beginning to do my lens transition towards the new RF mount. And the first lens that I bought, and it just arrived a few days ago, is the Canon RF 100-500. And this is a really nice lens. It gives me an additional 100 millimeters of reach, and is very comparable to the 100-400 that I'll be replacing. This week, I started seeing new flowers in the plants in my front yard. So this was a great excuse to go out and try to take some macro photography with the 100-400 lens. But how do we do that? How do we use these lenses for macro photography? And the answer is we use extension tubes. And an extension tube is nothing more than a spacer that will sit between the camera and the lens, and they're hollow. There are no optics. All they do is they allow the lens and the camera to communicate, even though we're increasing the gap between the two of them. And to mount this on the camera is very simple. We take our camera, extension tube, and now I'm going to mount the lens. And there it is. All I'm doing is increasing the space between the lens and the camera. And now this is going to allow me to get a lot closer and focus a lot closer to the subject and get the subject a lot bigger on the sensor. Now, does this make the 100-400 a macro lens? And the answer is no. Macro lenses are designed to allow us to focus really up close, to have a big subject on the sensor, and to have sharpness from the center of the image to the edge. But this can give us great results. A macro lens will cost us a few $100s, maybe as much as $1,000. And these extension tubes, there are different brands. You can spend anywhere from $30 to $50, and they come in packages or 2 or 3 with extension tubes of different thickness. And you can try 1, 2, or 3 of them. In this case, I'm using 2 of them to give me the spacing that I want. Now, once I have my gear ready, now it's time to go outside. And there are 2 methods that I use for taking flower shots. The first method is what I call static. And in that method, I'm going to put my gear on a tripod. I'm going to work my composition. I may use autofocus or manual focus. And I may even use focus bracketing to take multiple shots, focus in different parts of the flower, and then blending those images to give me an image that has very good depth of field. The problem is, if we have a little bit of wind, the flower is going to be moving and it's going to be hard to align all the images or to get the shots that we want. For that reason, I like what I call the dynamic method. And in the dynamic method, I'm going to be hand holding. I'm not going to use the tripod. I'm going to rely on the autofocus of the camera. In this case, I'm going to put it in servo mode. And I'm going to use high speed in the shutter. So every time I press the shutter, I'm going to take 3, 4, or 5 images. And at least one of those images is going to give me what I'm looking for. In 20-30 minutes, I took about 100 images, and I bring them into Lightroom and I do a quick evaluation on focus, composition. I mark the ones that I'm going to delete, and that's the advantage of digital cameras. You can get rid of images, take a lot of images and get rid of them, and the ones that I want to select for edit. So I want to show you some of the images that resulted from that session. Here you have a handful of images. I really like this one, the way it came out. As you can see, the center of the flower is really sharp. Here is another one taken from the front, one from the side, different angle. And my favorite is this one. I think the light came out really nice, and I like this angle where it keeps the center of the flower on the lower right of the frame. This is the original raw file, and I'm going to show you how I ended up with this one from this one. And the edits were relatively simple. You get a really nice file from the Canon R5. So the first thing I like to do is to crop the image. I want to get rid of some of this space on the left. I'm going to come down. I like to turn off the lights in Lightroom with hitting the letter L once, twice. Turns off all the text and all the panels, and you have less distractions, and you can then fine-tune your crop, and I think you end up getting better results. So that's the crop I'm going to go for. Next thing is in the basic panel, I think the exposure looks pretty good. I'm just going to increase the highlights. I want to basically get more light on the petals. I'm going to reduce the shadows, and that reduces the background. I'm going to increase the whites a bit. I'm going to reduce the blacks. If I keep Alt press while I move the black slider to the left, you can see the areas that are going to be black. And that gives me a very good starting point for the image. I'm going to avoid doing any global texture clarity or saturation adjustments. What I'm going to do is in the HSL color panel, using the targeted tool, I'm going to pick one of the magenta areas, and on saturation, I'm going to go up. Saturate basically the magentas. I'm going to do the opposite on the yellows and greens on the leaves. I'm going to come down a bit. Luminance, I'm going to go up also a bit on the magentas and down on the yellow and greens. And that has adjusted the color to my liking. In the detail panel, I'm going to apply some sharpening. Let's focus, let's magnify the center. And I'm going to adjust sharpening. Something like 70-80 points is a good starting point. I'm going to apply a mask. I don't want to sharpen any noise or detail on the petals. So with the Alt key, I move the mask to the right, and I just want to keep the center of the flower and the edges of the petals sharpened. And I'm going to apply a vignette. Something like that. It gets our attention towards the center. And now we're almost done. The only problem is I want to get more attention to the center of the flower. And we can do that with a combination of light, saturation, and sharpness. To do that, I'm going to use a radio filter. I'm going to put the radio filter here. I'm going to increase exposure, but I don't want to increase the exposure outside the filter, inside. So click on invert. So that was too much. I'm going to go something like that. I'm going to increase contrast a bit. Now I'm going to increase texture and clarity, and I think both of them are going to increase the perceived sharpness of the center of the flower. I'm going to increase the saturation a bit and brings out the yellows and the reds that were in the center. So that's without the radio filter and with the radio filter, without and with. So that radio filter really helped us get the attention to the center of the flower. Next thing is, let's inspect the image. When we do macro shots, it's important to get rid of any blemishes. We start with pristine flowers. These flowers had just bloomed this week, so they were in very good shape, but there is a little black spot in this area. So I'm going to use the correcting heel brush and just click on that area. It did a good job of fixing it, and that's the complete image. Let's put it to full screen, and this is a completed image. It gave us a very nice result. I really like how the RF 100 to 500 worked. As you saw, I got very nice results by using the Canon R5 with the RF 100 500 lens and the extension tubes. And all it cost me was $40 on a set of extension tubes, and I got great macro results. So it increases the versatility of the lens, at least for the type of photography that I use. I'm going to continue to sell some of my older EF gear. Like say, I'll probably be selling my 100 400 very soon. And I do plan on buying some additional RF lenses, including the recently announced Canon RF 100mm macro. But that lens is going to cost over $1,300. So I'm trying to get some money and get some savings and invest in that lens, and then once it comes on the market. Well, I hope you like this short video. If you're liking these videos, please don't forget to subscribe, send me a comment, tell a friend about this channel, help me grow it, and I'll see you next time.